opposite hemisphere's lat, that's the left side, while pushing through the right hip and lifting the pelvis off. Now, as Ryan does that, he's going to pull his opposite leg into flexion, like you would see during walking or gait or ambulation, and he's going to push down through his heel and lift his pelvis up. Now, in a position or a pelvic position where the hip is too dominant on the externals because the groin might be too tight, what you might see is the knee rotate away and the hip drop down like this. That means that, again, we have so much tension from the groin on that dominant side that it makes the externals over-engage when it goes back into extension. The leg goes back to extension. So the goal here is to provide sufficient force through the lat to maintain the extension of the opposite hemisphere so that we can engage the flexors against gravity to keep that pelvis neutral by keeping it pulled inward, but not too inward, and keep the femur tracking at its natural Q angle, or again, inclination towards the inside of the body at about 13 degrees from the out to in. Now he's going to push down and let the body come down. And he's going to try his best here not to let the pelvis rotate down on the left hemisphere. He's going to do that by keeping his knee subtly internally rotated, but not too much. He's going to keep his knee away, but not too much. Press through the hip. Push down on the left hemisphere. If you notice, both of his left and right hip bones are nice and neutral. By engaging the lat, he keeps his back nice and straight. His hip flexor is not going to be so strong. His groin isn't going to be so strong on the left that it pulls his hip over. And then that way that femur can track nice and evenly in that soft hip that has the tabulum. So he's going to breathe in, push up. Keep the knee inside the hip line. Keep both the right and left hip bones parallel to the ground. And then breathe out and come down nice and slow. A couple pointers. As you do this, breathing in, look down towards your hips. As you push down, push away almost through your heel, almost like you're pushing your foot down, almost like you're going back into extension. Now, if we switch out to the left side, we'll start talking about the opposite hemisphere. And we know that this guy has a tendency, if this was the regressive or externally rotated, to want to rotate open. So as he pushes up, that hip is going to start to rotate down excessively on the opposite hemisphere. As he pushes, you'll see that hip again rotate inward because the glutes are tight and pulling the whole pelvis with it. So we're not going to let that happen. So the goal, once again, is to keep the knee internally rotated, keep the opposite palm on the ground, initiate through the lat on that right side by pushing down, keep the hip nice and neutral by keeping this leg out subtly, push down through the heel on the left side, keep the hip line nice and neutral. So he might want to, again, just pull this over just a little bit. There we go, right? And then come down nice and controlled with no excessive